Three, two,
behind the
one.
scenes here.
Blog Talk Radio.
It's always a good day when that's what I hear. We're here on Blog Talk Radio, and this is the K Factor, where K equals kindness, and the factors are all the things that lead to it. However, however, here in December, and by the way, launched with the gentleman who's in here with me today, this is now Partners in Excellence Media, the influencers. Because what we want to do here is bring you the news. So we are media, and we're the influencers for what? For your mind, your business, your heart, your health, your well being, your freedoms. So, welcome. Good morning, Brian Lunt. How are you?
Good morning, Dr. Deb. I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, you sure are. So, by the way, yeah, I'm Dr. Deb Carlin, and we are co hosting this show. And actually, Brian Lunt and I are going to be doing a show twice a week. On Tuesdays, we're going to be doing the St. Louis Business Club, which, oh, I love this thing, and you're going to learn all about it. And then on Thursdays, he and I are coming together for Riding a Lion,
That's right.
stories about entrepreneurship. So, what in the world are you thinking about in terms of that?
So I have been on this entrepreneurial journey for 5+ years. And in the last couple of years, I was given this quote, or I came across this quote by a CEO who has gone through the ebbs and flows of entrepreneurship and business building. And it hit me the right way. And so this quote that he said when he was asked about entrepreneurship is he said, entrepreneurship is like riding a lion. People look at him and think, this guy's really got it together. He's brave. And the man riding the lion is thinking, how in the hell did I get on a lion? And how do I keep from getting eaten? And I just loved that quote because I do my best to project a very confident persona. I'm very authentic with people and I do well in front of others. But at the same time, I think as an entrepreneur, we are constantly battling this day-to-day struggle of things are great, things are terrible, things are mediocre, I'm excited, I'm pissed. It's just this range of emotions that comes with managing businesses and people.
Right.
It's fantastic, but it's also like riding a lion. So I thought it just really encapsulated what I believe when it comes to entrepreneurialism.
So, as a lifelong entrepreneur, I can tell you, yeah, I love lions. And when you and I actually talked in advance about that and you described that to me, I thought, no wonder I have issues with motion sickness. You know, it's been a way of life. So tell me, what is an entrepreneur? Can you get a degree in entrepreneurship and that makes you an entrepreneur? Do you have to be self-employed? Do you have to join a club? What is it?
No, I think entrepreneurial thinking is really what it is rooted in. I think critical thinking is what is not taught well enough in our school systems.
Oh, yeah.
Being able to think on your feet, being adaptable to situations, really finding how to make things work, I think is all about being entrepreneurial. And it just so happens that many business owners are put in those circumstances where they can thrive in kind of the chaos of figuring it out.
Yeah.
And so that's what I believe an entrepreneur is. There's very entrepreneurial minded people within corporate structures, within government structures. They're more so out of, a fish out of water in those boxes. But I see a lot of people that just have the capability to adapt. And I think adaptability is at the core of that. And if 2020 has taught us anything, man, it's been the year of adaptation. So, I think entrepreneurs are a way of thinking, and that's what I really like to. That's who I like to work with. That's who I like to surround myself with. Many and most are probably business owners where they're self-employed and they own their own business. But there are so many people that have that entrepreneurial mindset of just let's figure it out as we go, and I feel empowered to do so.
So do you think in entrepreneurship, it's really funny that you put it into the brain and the mindset. because I do believe that. But I also um, find myself describing entrepreneurs as, like living on the edge because there's a fire burning in their belly, a passion, a vision that they absolutely are driven to actualize. Do you agree with that, or am I off the mark here?
100%. A good friend of mine, colleague of mine, had told me years ago when I was getting into financial planning, he said, sometimes you get a hold of an idea and sometimes an idea gets a hold of you. And I love that. I love the way that he framed that, because he was on a path to change the financial industry and financial literacy for the masses.
Yeah.
And he had gotten this inspiration and just had to see it come to fruition. And so for the last, I don't know, however many decades, he has been on this path to spread financial literacy to the masses. And that's what I believe I see in entrepreneurs. You have an idea, you have a vision, you have something that most others can't see besides you, and you just have to make it happen. And so my company that I have, Seed Level Creativity Lab, my slogan is create the things you wish existed. And so I believe that there are entrepreneurs, there are visionaries out there that see things that others don't, and they have just an internal drive to make sure that that happens. And if anything, it exists for them, but I think more so they want it to exist for them and others. And so that's what I see as kind of an entrepreneurial mindset.
Okay, so say the name of your company again.
It's Seed, SEED,
Yeah.
Level Creativity Lab.
Seed Level Creativity Lab. So you're basically like a petri dish.
In a lot of ways, yeah. I mean, I think names have purpose. I think you should be considerate when you name something. You should make sure that you're proud of it. You want to put it on your building or your shirt.
Right.
And for me, Seed Level had three meanings. Most businesses, organizations need seed capital in order to get moving.
Yeah.
I believe that all good ideas begin like a seed in your mind, and then you have to seed those ideas or relationships or whatever in other people's minds. And then, of course, the biblical parable of the mustard seed and your faith. Taking something very, very small inside of you and seeing it grow.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that seed, that mustard seed, can be so annoying. It can get caught, and you just can never stop the experience of it. So what is it? When did you start that company, Seed Level?
Well, again, it began as a seed in my mind much earlier than the physical, the corporate paperwork.
Okay.
I believe I filed for it in 2015, and it really materialized throughout 2016. So I had been working on the precursor plans of what I still wish to build for probably 10 years prior to that. So I had been sitting in my office, which I was a banker for many years. Unfortunately, because I worked for my father, he probably would have liked me to be working all the time, but half the time I was thinking about things I'd rather be doing besides banking. So,
well, should we send him this episode or not?
Absolutely. He's he's one of my number one cheerleaders. We had our moments, but yeah, he loves it.
So when you were sitting in that banker's office, I mean, this is a very traditional conservative job. I mean, there's creative bankers out there, and I love that. As a matter of fact, I would tease my banker, who will go unnamed, for always winning Entrepreneur of the Year. And I said to him, let me just be clear with you. I love and admire you, and I appreciate every deal that we do. Back in the olden days when you could do it on a handshake, which is how I love to do business. But you're not an entrepreneur. And he was like, what? How dare you? And I said,
fighting words.
You know what? You get a paycheck. You've got the whole package here. I'm an entrepreneur, which is why I come to you for money. I mean, I have to make it out here on my own. So tell me how we're different. Well, because he's creative, he's got all these different ideas. I had to honor that, because he did indeed have a fire in him to do what he was trying to do. So while you were there sitting there being a banker and you were thinking about other things, say more about that. Because you had the mustard seed, but why? I mean, you had this beautiful, secure life. Banks are very safe to be in. They're usually beautiful. You probably had a good
Yeah.
paycheck. Your life was simple,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah. I had everything of anybody you would think could dream of. I had essentially the American dream. I mean, I had beautiful wife, two and a half kids, white picket fence. One time I was driving a BMW, going to and from a nice job where my father had me employed and I could have stayed for life. You know, for many people, and I don't take it lightly, for many people, they would love to have the life that I had.
Yeah.
But I was miserable most of the time because I was completely a fish out of water, having this entrepreneurial drive inside of me and not enjoying the structure, and
Ah,
more so living, looking, yearning for something that was more exciting, that had a lot more variety, that had, that I could use my brain towards thinking up new things and putting them in practice and trial and error, and just, thriving in an environment that would be more conducive for creativity and reward creativity and have some fun with all of that. So it was most of the time that I was thinking I'd rather be doing something else because it just wasn't a good fit for me.
yeah.
Great scenario for the right person,
Yeah.
but it just wasn't the good fit for me.
So what were you sitting there thinking about?
So I lots of things, probably too many things, and in many cases everything.
Okay.
I have a brain that likes to structure things in a way that I can absorb it for myself and then also hopefully explain it to others. And so
Okay.
I've been trying to organize life and business in a way that it was simple.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time thinking about all the fundamentals that we need in our lives, all the fundamentals that we need in business. I had a great vantage point as a banker to see people from behind the lens because I could look at your bank account and know exactly who you are and what you had. And so if you were a liar, I could call you on it. I could see the business operations of all of these companies that were supporting the acquisitions of buildings and homes and things along those lines. And I kept thinking, there's just some really good fundamentals and basics that go into all of it. And what I was trying to find was the balance in both life and business. And so I spent a lot of time researching how other people had organized their lives, how other people had organized their businesses, and I try to find the commonalities and the patterns in all of those things. And so I spent a long time trying to determine how to organize a good life and how to organize a good business. And I think a lot of that was inspired by my high school and college and eventually the search for a career, because I always had this thing inside of me that said, once I find it, the watch out world, right?
Really,
And
really.
I think there's so many people that believe that, if I just had that thing that I could put all of my energy into, I would. But we're left uninspired in so many different areas. And so I liked high school. I did well in high school, but there wasn't anything that was burning for me. And so I didn't know what to pursue. When I looked at college, I thought, oh, I kind of like being creative. Maybe advertising could be a place to go because Mizzou, where I was headed, but had a good journalism school, but
Right.
that didn't materialize. And then I thought maybe, a legal pathway and looking at the law could be interesting. And my dad said, well, every attorney I know is kind of an asshole. So I think you should steer away from attorneys, which in retrospect has probably been more true than not. And so I went into business because that's what my dad did. And so I think a lot of people pursue a path that they see others in their lives take. And so I went to business, didn't really care for that, ended up switching to a sociology degree because I like people, which isn't all that hot of a commodity in the marketplace. So,
Right.
which led me to working for my father, even though I had probably other things that would have lit me up a little bit better than banking.
You know what? Here's a couple things that I've been running through my mind while you've been telling me this story. First of all, your entrepreneurial birth and how all this happened is a unique story. You're really coming at it from a struggle standpoint. And what's so fascinating to me about this is that I can see you sitting in your banking office, and then I can also see you sitting in college and in high school trying to figure out where's the spark. You know, like
Yeah.
when's it going to happen? What's my purpose? And it's intriguing to me because what you've done, my observation of you is that you're very creative, you're very much a business guy and you're very creative. And by the way, I love having you on this platform for the influencers because nobody, this is, you know, all the shows are different, but this is so unique because people are going to learn here a lot of things over time as we are doing this. I forgot to tell you that there was a invisible ink clause on the agreement that we have, and it says that this agreement is forever. So most people
Sounds
think
good.
it's like just for a defined amount of time, and it just no, because there's so much that we need to tell people, share with people, inspire with people, and you know the thing that really is bothersome, Brian, is that when I was growing up, critical thinking skills, the teachers were talking about it in when I was in grade school. So
Mhm.
this goes back into the 60s.
Yeah.
And I mean the big push was, you know, we want you kids to learn critical thinking skills. And I was like, what does that mean? I mean, does that mean they're going to be harsh with us? They're going to be critical? And I remember asking, you know, raise my little hand, what do you mean? What do you mean critical thinking? And you know, it was interesting because it really wasn't until I was in high school that I started to really understand it. And then it really wasn't until I was in college that I came to understand it. And why? Because the human brain can't do contingency thinking, abstract thinking when you're in grade school. You know, I mean, it's just like starting, which is why algebra should be introduced at a certain age, because otherwise you just think, why do they have alphabet soup poured all over my paper here? You know,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do with this? So you're describing it as, and now, by the way, so many people that we both know are struggling. What's my purpose? What
Mhm.
is my purpose here in this life? And some of the best-selling books are about what's your purpose?
Yeah.
And so do you know what is your purpose now? Have you found out what your purpose is?
I have, and it took a lot of exploration and trial and error. And oddly enough, that's very much a part of the recipe. I I have determined that my greatest strength is trialing things in life and business and then telling people about it. And so what I've gotten really good at is seeing what's out there, getting a really intimate understanding of it, and then recommending it to others or telling people my experience. And so I've been able to showcase that through business consulting, coaching, whatever you want to call it, getting into various businesses, starting my own. It's a huge variety of ways that it materializes, um, but it's the same recipe. I get to throw myself into the lion's den, and I get to jump on the lion and ride it and go. That was either terrible or it was, man, what a ride, and come back and report to others. And I think it's authentic. I think it's good, um, to be honest with people about what it's like, you know. And I think part of the reason I was in banking, part of the reasons I've gone through the various roles that I've had in my life, there was purpose behind it so that I can say, um, this was my experience. And I have some relevant understanding of what that means instead of what I had when I came out of college was a whole lot of ideas and no experience. And so you're not taken very seriously, which, you know, once you're older, you understand, well, it sounds great in theory, but put it into practice. And that's a big difference between an entrepreneur and an educator as well, is that, you know, entrepreneurs know it because they lived it.
Yeah.
Educators, especially at the university level, many of them are lifers in terms of what they're teaching, and they have no relevant experience. And so it's difficult to hear how to do something by somebody who's never done it.
So what is your favorite thing to do in a day? Other than this show.
I love learning about people. You know, I think people are the greatest thing to, well, how should I say this? I like to sit down with folks, learn about them at a deeper level, very quickly break behind the veil of what they think they are, the persona that they put in front of folks,
Yeah.
and learn about them, because I think ultimately we all connect on a very human level. And so the more that I can learn about folks and what truly drives them, because I've gone through that experience myself of trying to find my own fire, I think I can break those walls down very quickly and get to the core of somebody, and help them navigate their path. And so that's what I love to do.
So one of the things I'm wondering, in the midst of this seed company that you have, what is it that you do with people? You're talking about consulting and you're talking about coaching. Say more about that, because I'm very intrigued, given everything that you've said. What is your style? If somebody is listening or watching to us and they're thinking, I wonder what Brian Lunt would do with me if I stepped in.
So I've taken this process of learning fundamentals and tried to put it into a curriculum that I follow for myself first,
Okay.
and then I recommend to others. And so I've built everything around 6 areas of life and 6 areas of business.
Oh.
And I think it is showcased in many other people's programs. I think there are some, just like I believe there are some natural laws in science and in religion, I think there are some fundamentals in life and business. And so I have built these 6 areas of life, which are basically the basics of life: communications and understanding who you are on the inside, and how you work.
I'm counting.
So that's really the prime, life overview.
Okay.
But then that goes into kind of your spiritual and emotional understanding, your physical health, and those 3 are really your internal life. Then you get into cultural, or the environmental, meaning the places that you put yourself in, the people that you surround yourself with, relational, and then financial. And those 3 are kind of the exterior part of your life. That correlates over into the business side of things, which with basic fundamentals of how you're going to structure yourself, from a financial perspective, from a legal perspective, what your vision and mission and unique ability is when you're putting together what it is you're trying to accomplish. And then that goes into human resources, or what I prefer, human capital, because it's looked on more as an asset.
Yes, I agree with you 100% on that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then systems, documentation, and those 3 categories really take over the operational side of business, which all businesses are made up of 2 things: operations and marketing.
Yeah.
And then on the marketing side, I break those down into branding, lead generation, and sales. And so
you are like Mr. Detail, man. You have thought about everything. You've incubated this for decades.
So the benefit that I had, and what I believe my purpose of working with my father is he is detail crazy. He needs details about everything. And the woman I used to be married to was the same way. I seem to have attracted these 2, big people in my life that always needed the details. And so I am much more, I think there's general to specific thinkers and specific to general thinkers.
Yeah.
And I was surrounded by these 2 people who were constantly asking me, what's the time? What's the date? What are we wearing? How is it going? All of these things. And I just felt inundated with questions nonstop.
Oh,
I would bring my father a proposal or a project, and I'd think I had thought of everything. And within 3 minutes, he had just torched it to pieces,
Oh my.
So I believe I had to develop a skill over, 10 plus years of being able to think from the general to the specific and back and forth. And what I've done is I've tried to develop that as a skill to be able to communicate to both styles.
Okay.
And so that's really what I've tried to to develop over the years, you know.
You know, I'm zoning in on your spark and what it is that, like, when you wake up in the morning and you're thinking, ah, what is that? I mean, are you like, just you think about that lion and you can't wait to climb on and just go on the adventure? Or do you have the details of what it is?
You know, the details for me just work themselves out.
Yeah.
Um, I am a genuine general to specific thinker. So I think, oh, I've got, you know, these 5 or 6 things that are on my schedule today, and I can navigate my entire day around those 6 interactions or events or whatever we're doing, and the details fill in inside of that. And so I have the benefit of looking at an event. You know, I run a lot of masterminds, and so I'll have a group that I know is coming in,
Yeah.
and I have no idea yet how the exact details are going to fall in, but they always do, and it happens much more organic, which is more of my style. Even though some of the people around me would prefer more agenda style, you know, interactions, but I can play both sides as well. You know, that's just what I prefer.
You know what I love about this? I'm getting a sense of you in this very relaxed vein that is, if just in case you didn't know, I can identify it for you. It's an inner confidence
Mm-hmm.
and it's a peace, even in the midst of 2020,
Mm-hmm.
even in the midst of all this uncertainty. The thing that you are certain about is, I know what I love.
Yeah.
And I know what I love to do, which is why you can do it without an agenda at these masterminds, because your confidence is what needs to be reviewed will be revealed.
Yeah.
And you do indeed have an agenda, and that is part of the agenda.
Yeah.
It drives people to distraction, though, some of the time, because they're thinking, well, you know, look to the left, look to the right. What do I need to get ready for? And they want to be prepared. And what I think is beautiful is when, as a leader, and you are a leader, you're a great leader. And I want to, you know, illuminate that part of you, because a great leader attracts people in, does not give them all the answers, but opens the door and provides the platform for them to be there.
Yeah.
And then as you're on that teetering of, entrepreneurship, wait a second, what's the lion walking towards me for? You have to get your inner confidence to be able to straddle that animal and allow it to go a certain direction, right?
And again, I think I harken back to that, the years of doing other things and kind of going through the motions of understanding business, getting educated, being in the midst of hundreds, if not thousands, of business owners, and getting that interaction and knowledge of what that brings. There's, you know, I had it just like most people had it when you're young. You have the confidence, but it's more built on naivety and you know, possibility, and there's an inner confidence that says I can conquer the world, but I don't know how, you know. And so I think that's gotten even more prevalent in today's society, that we have a young population that on the surface seems extremely confident, and they're very capable of learning very quickly and then reiterating those things that they learned, but they don't know anything.
Yeah, right.
And so, you know, I will teach somebody who's much younger than me what I know, and I will hear them later that day teaching somebody else the same thing. And I'll think, you just learned that. You don't know it. You just learned it. And so it's a little inauthentic to hear that from somebody who doesn't know it. And I think that comes with life experience, that comes with age. You know, I remember being 20 years old and having my father and other colleagues talk to me like, you don't know anything.
Right.
And now that I'm 20 years plus, you know, I get to do the same thing and say, you don't know anything.
So one of the things that's beautiful about that is if you hear younger people reiterating what you've said and kind of trying to take credit for it, They're in the process of learning it, practicing it, hearing their own voice. When they really trip and stumble is if anybody asks so many questions,
Of course.
right? So that they get stuck on that. So when you hear that, what do you do with that? Do you just kind of watch? Do you intervene and say, do you run them through a process of inquiry and query them to see what do they really know?
It's interesting because I've built the majority of my businesses and organizations over the years in reaction to what younger people want.
Oh, really?
I've built co-working spaces that are much more open, they're much more diverse.
Okay.
There's a lot of different thought, there's fun. My business spaces feel more like restaurants or, a space that you would go in a social setting than they do a corporate setting.
Okay.
And they have bells and whistles and they have interactivity and relationships and experiences. And that's what I think a lot of the younger folks are looking for. But I don't like younger people. I don't feed off of them. They
Okay.
irritate me because of the fact that it could be just I'm looking at a younger version of myself and I'm irritated by how I thought at that point because
Yeah.
I thought I knew everything and hadn't had the experience yet. But I shouldn't say all young people, the young people that know that they don't know everything and they're very eager to learn and they're very humble, I am attracted to.
Mhm.
But the ones that come in and utilize their intelligence because they're quick thinking and they're very well versed in technology and they can find the answer very quickly, but
Yeah.
not necessarily know the answer. That irritates me because they want to put themselves on par with the elders of our society, which
Yeah.
I did as well. I
Yes.
did as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
But they don't want to give credence to the ones that have done it. And so coming into coming into a situation and telling somebody who has done something how to do it
Yeah.
is not,
Oh,
and I'm almost feeling myself talking to myself as my father because I've heard my dad say that to me a couple of times.
yeah. Right. Well, this is interesting because, quite frankly, um, our culture, my observation is that our culture is in quite a bit of jeopardy. We don't know what lies ahead. And we do have a lot of youngsters out here. And when I say youngsters, I mean um, kids in their 20s and even still teens, 18, 19 years old. And I consider adolescence to continue, starting at prepubescence,
Yep.
9 to 11 years old, and it goes till you're about 23, that adolescent period, because you're not really launched from childhood into adulthood. Adolescence being that wavy, rocky road. So, in a way, anytime we hear somebody behaving the way that you're describing, they're really still adolescent because they're still trying on their identity.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that because one of my sociology professors at Mizzou did his entire thesis on this, on the extension of adolescence.
Oh,
And
really?
and it was essentially that, older aged Americans that went out, well, going way back, you were out on the farm at age 12, 13,
Right.
basically running the place.
Yeah.
Then we believed that adulthood was at 18, then it kind of went to 21. And then really at my generation, it was closer to 25 because that's when you could drop off of the insurance and other things that, you benefited from your parents or you were finishing up college that your parents were paying for. And I believe now we've actually extended adolescence almost to age 30. And it kind of goes along with the proportions of life because the life cycle has gone from 40 years back when you were adult at 9
Right.
to, almost 80 plus years at this point. And so you've got this extended period of time that you can figure things out, but we're also handing this younger understanding, especially with athletes and entertainers. And, I just saw something this morning with Justin Bieber, and he made a joke about what happens when you hand an 18-year-old $200 million, and there's a lot of truth in that. You see some of these athletes and entertainers that get handed this amount of money and they're expected to understand,
Yeah.
the complexities of what that means, and then they get themselves in trouble. So
Right, exactly.
yeah,
And you know what? At any point in time, if somebody handed me that $200 million, I would get myself in trouble.
I think we all might.
So what is it that you think, with the work that you do and the visionary that you are on this lion,
Mhm.
what's our sweet spot for our culture? What's our entrepreneurial movement? Are we a country of entrepreneurship, or are we a country of people who want to be employed and just keep it simple?
I believe in my core that America is one of the most special things to happen to humanity, um, and that the individualism that is inside of all of the American appeal is what makes it great. And so I think entrepreneurship is at the absolute core of our essence. And I think you can see that in our society, that with a lot of this bigger business, bigger government, bigger religion type of thinking, where you get masses of people together to say, "Oh, we're all going to do it this one way." I think there's some conflict there. I think there's a lot of people that want more of the individualistic understanding and the I can do it better on my own than I can having somebody tell me how to do it. Now,
Mhm.
there's obviously flavors for both sides, and I think some would prefer it the other way, and like having a lot of structure. What speaks to the core of both of those, I believe, is figuring out what people are here to do and what their purpose is. There's an author named Poe Bronson who wrote a book called What Should I Do with My Life?
Mm.
And I believe he was on a panel discussion with some other prominent figures talking about what's going to be the next great wave of productivity. And they said it's going to be, you can take two people that are in roles that do not fit in the same company making the same thing, and you can potentially switch their roles and responsibilities, and all of a sudden they're into something that they really enjoy and they're internally motivated to do, and their productivity will rise.
Now, wait a
And
second. Say that again. You have two people
yep.
in the same company,
Mhm.
in the same role,
And no, in different roles.
different roles, and
Yep.
you decide to switch them
Mhm.
just like because, or you see some.
If let's say you go into a company and you assess your employees, you ask them actual questions, not just company related questions. You find out what their burning desires are, and you determine what kind of work is going to make them more fulfilled.
Okay.
What is going to align better with their purpose. You take two people that are in those roles and you figure out they're in a mismatch, and so swapping them into the correct roles will identify that internal burning desire, and your output will increase automatically because you're now doing something that you enjoy doing,
I love that.
and you will do more. And so if we can identify that in the vast majority of people and just start swapping roles, our productivity will go through the roof. And so you had the agricultural revolution, the industrial, the information age. The next great wave of productivity is going to be the purpose, finding everyone's purpose. And
Mm.
once we find everyone's purpose, look out, world.
That's amazing. The thing that I worry about with people is I see people going into training, going into college, going into training, getting certifications, and trying to figure out, okay, here's what I think I want to do, and here's the reasons why. And they get in there and they want to start mashing it around, and there's no, the story very well, there's no room for movement.
Yeah.
You need to do it this way. You were trained to do it this way. Why are you being defiant? Why are you coming in here and trying to change it? And I think that angst to do it better is what gives everybody that drive entrepreneurially. I agree with you. I think that the United States of America is the land of opportunity, because we've had, since we landed here, this opportunity to make something out of nothing.
Mhm.
And I actually think that when you go through training, education, certifications, ongoing lifelong learning, you see how it's done. And then if you're creative and you're really attached to what it is that's going on, and you come up with the most grand outcome, you can't help but be on the lion. You're already mounted on the lion. You're
Yeah.
already walking down that path saying, here's another way to do it. And, I'm going to start roaring if you don't let me do it this way. I'm going to have to make a new path.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think our systems, because one of my core fundamentals is developing systems. I think the system that has been built for our society um, is a little flawed right now. And I think our educational system, I think our financial systems, I think some of these bigger systems, and I'm just naturally allergic to large systems
Yeah.
uh, because they don't allow for the entrepreneurial spirit of adaptation very quickly. Trying to change a large ship's trajectory is much more difficult than a smaller ship's trajectory.
Right.
So I'm naturally suspicious of large institutions, but I think we've developed these systems so that they feed the system, and they don't allow for fighting back or changing the model or changing things to be more for the individual. And so I believe that our educational system teaches people how to work well within the system instead
Right.
of how to think. And
Right.
so I think it'd be much better for us to be teaching critical thinking, teaching entrepreneurial thinking, so that we can have a lot more people considering what's a better way, what's something that works better for us here, as opposed to trying to make a one size fits all that works for everybody, because I just don't think that works.
What's really funny is I have met kids in their 20s who so what are you majoring in? You're in college. What are you majoring in? Entrepreneurial studies. And I think, is it right? So tell me what that's like. I mean, what are you studying in there? And it's a business curriculum,
Yeah.
a little bit of sociology blended into it, but I have not reviewed the country in terms of their entrepreneurial studies programs, but I don't see two essential things. And I hope we get a wide enough audience that people listen to this all over America and around the world. They go, man, do you have it wrong? So let's correct you. I invite everybody to write in, call in, chat in, whatever it is you want to do here. But here's the thing. I don't see critical thinking skills being a component of it.
Mhm.
I don't see creative thinking and creative exercises being a part of it. What I see is kind of a lockdown, and there's a beauty, a mystery, something kind of sexy about entrepreneurship. And what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to struggle, and then I'm going to launch something really big. And the struggle is the part that people think is really kind of groovy. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, yeah, no, it's not. No, it's not. And the launching of something big, that mustard seed is going to get caught in your teeth. It's
Mhm.
going to get caught in your chair. And you never even thought that you could feel a mustard seed when you're sitting down. It's going to get caught in your shoe. And it's so annoying, isn't it? And you have to keep germinating it
Yeah.
until it does something. I don't see that is what's being taught in the entrepreneurial.
Yeah, you're pressing on something that we have not mentioned yet, but an entrepreneur has more perseverance than most people, because if you are not comfortable with failing on an almost daily basis, you cannot be an entrepreneur, because it's going to happen over and over and over again. And so you need a mindset that says, I never fail, I just learn. And so the learning process is the actual going through all of the trial and error in order to get to a good product or a good service.
Yeah.
And I always push back. I've been to some wonderful educational institutions. I'd say I got my entrepreneurial burn from going to Washington University, which is a phenomenal institution, but they don't necessarily teach entrepreneurialism like I believe they should teach entrepreneurialism. And I would actually rather give my child or give an aspiring student $100,000 to go start a business than $100,000 to get an entrepreneurial education, because I can almost guarantee you are going to learn more running a business than you will from one of the greatest institutions in the world.
I agree with
And,
you on that.
and it's not saying that Washington University doesn't do a fantastic job, but I can also get a free library card and go get every single book that they recommend and learn that side of things from the library,
Yeah.
which is, I'm an enormous proponent of self-study. I think I have learned leaps and bounds more than others because I have an insatiable desire to know more. And
Yeah.
so somebody who has perseverance and a library card, I will bet on every day almost over somebody who hasn't done anything and has an MBA.
So when you go as a consultant and you do what you do you get called into entrepreneurial organizations or really static organizations? And what do they do with you if you want to pull the switcheroo? Have you done that?
I prefer small businesses. I prefer, many cases I'm working with 1 person to 5, 10 person style businesses. I think you can get more depth. You can get more into their mindset. You can understand them better, get to know them better. I've worked in larger organizations, but they're messier. They're somebody else's special sauce. Not what I enjoy. I was just talking to a colleague of mine yesterday. I don't like corporate settings. I don't even like more sophisticated corporate employees. I can talk to anybody, but when I'm in a group of sophisticated C-suite CEOs, and CMOs and all these big time guys talking about international trade and reverse swaps and crazy sophisticated instruments that they use to manage companies, I just glaze over and go, I want to know what it takes to, keep the lights on and make sure that everybody's happy doing what it is that they want. I want to know the nuts and bolts of the real estate that you're in and just the fundamentals. That to me is what excites me, because I think every business needs good fundamentals, and you find that better at the smaller scale. That doesn't mean that it doesn't very easily correlate with larger businesses. I think they all need it. I think everybody needs fundamentals, and that's what we're lacking in our educational system. I don't know how many times I have heard, why don't they teach you how to run your checkbook in high school?
Yes.
I have heard dozens, if not hundreds of people say that to me, and I go, it's unbelievable that they don't have, they took home economics out of school. And
what?
Go, I learned how to sew. I learned how to sew, and I still know. I learned how to make some food. I learned how to do some just basic home economics. And but you're learning calculus.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, you and I are completely aligned on this. And really, when you stop and think about it, when you are doing the calculus, you're in a very ethereal kind of in a reality. And when you're in home economics, it's about your survival. And that is a form of entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to figure out, if you've got a family of 5, how are you going to feed them? How do you figure out what the bills are?
I admire stay-at-home moms more than any other role on the planet, because parenting is the hardest role for me to fulfill.
Yeah.
And these stay-at-home moms or dads that can do this, it's like super people to me. I just am amazed by people that can do this day in and day out, because I do it for 20 minutes and I'm exhausted.
Well, in your space, Riding the Lion, and what we'll be talking to our audience again about on Tuesday, is the St. Louis Business Club. And so within the St. Louis Business Club, as the inventor of that, as the founder of that, you bring together people into that space, that physical space, and now also that virtual space. And you're really, it seems to me, and it sounds to me, and it looks to me like you're infusing everything that we've talked about during this hour into that population. And obviously they're there not just because of the physical space, but they want that from you.
Yes. And it's been, I've had the benefit of running similar organizations and groups for 5+ years. And the model has been the same all along. I have tried to instill in everyone that we do better when we collaborate. We
Mhm.
do better when we identify what's good in each one of us, and we focus on those strengths, and we cross promote, and we share responsibilities amongst one another. And it's all been built on this fundamental curriculum. It's just taken on different organizations and different styles in order to get the same thing accomplished, which is really, let's all get a good understanding of what our fundamentals are, then find your sweet spot out of that and go specialize in that. But make sure that your fundamentals are in balance first. And that's where I think we've been lacking as a society. We've been lacking in education and in really continuing education in our businesses. And I always say that the St. Louis Business Club really represents continuing education for life and business, because you have real estate agents, you have medical professionals, you have all these different modalities that have continuing education to keep them fine-tuned on what they do. And life is just continuing education in and of itself. And in many cases, entrepreneurship is continuing education. But who can you have to assist you and help you and maybe accelerate some of that growth? And so the business club is made up of masters or experts in each one of those arenas that we can put in front of you to help you, navigate some of those things.
That's such an amazing reality. It's so funny because about my involvement with taking on the Missouri Venture Forum.
Of course.
And, the oldest organization for entrepreneurs in St. Louis and in the St. Louis metropolitan area, now in the 36th year. And one of the things that is interesting was, that group came together because they were just a bunch of business guys that were meeting for breakfast once a month on Fridays. And they started saying things to each other like, my kids are grown. I put them through the best schools here and the best, sent them away to college. And now they've got this great idea and they're taking it elsewhere. They're leaving
Yeah.
St. Louis. What are we going to do? We better figure out a way to keep them here by setting them up with the right vendors and then providing opportunity here and funding, investment, either angel or capital or banks or whatever. And it's a beautiful model. But here's one of the things that happened in the midst of that. Now, 30 years later, the model is, come in from anywhere and you can be here and get funding and make all this happen. It is the land of fertility. But come in here and, suffer.
Yeah.
There's a thing called, like entrepreneur scourge or whatever. And so you and your environment, I've been talking about well-being in that environment, and people look at me and they get excited for a minute and then they think, well, no, we can't. We don't distract us. So I love what you're doing at the business club, the St. Louis Business Club. I love that we're here every week, twice a week, because there's so much messaging and education and guidance that we need to provide for people. So bless your heart for being here. In the last 30 seconds, what do you want to say?
I want to inspire people to reach out to one another and be authentic and showcase where they need help and ask for help. I'm very guilty of not asking for help, and I think I'd like to tell myself to do that by telling everybody else to do it as well. So,
okay.
it's a good
Well, I
thing.
think that's Brian's call for help from me.
I'll take it.
All right, Brian, you got it always. Well, this has been delightful and exciting, and I love it that we've launched now this show. And this is your host, Dr. Deb Carlin, with my co-host, Brian Lunt. And until next time, here's how it goes. We do the peace out, and we do the end the episode.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio.
Oh,
Goodbye.
chip, chip. Peace out.